Saturday. That's right, every Saturday.
From 8 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. Or call Mike at 961-7239. Or go see him
every Saturday
at 1911 King Edward Avenue, just across from the main plant. Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933. 961-7239.
No dealers allowed.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
Welcome back to Whoop Studios. We finally got these guys calmed down enough, so maybe
not really.
We can have a little more conversation. Actually, when we take these breaks, they get into a lot. Also, there's going to be a day that I'm going to leave these mics open on break. Just let them see what
I'll really get in trouble.
I've been bringing a bar of soap.
I'm more likely to get in trouble than Franklin, so I will give him that.
Anyway, I've asked the question several times, and finally John asked me, he said, why are you asking where the president is? Where is he? And I said, well, he's out touring the country again. He's politicking. And basically he's politicking to sell his program of taxing the rich and the medium class and the poor if they've got any money. But anyway, he's in Philadelphia now because he does have a lot of support around Philadelphia and Chicago area and some of those areas. But basically he's avoiding trying to negotiate things like the physical cliff negotiations. I know Bob Corker has a plan he's trying to present. Also, he hasn't been talking much about Mohammed Morsi from Egypt and the issues there where Morsi.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because
we'll talk about that.
First of all, it's a really complicated issue. And I don't think this has anything to do with Republican or Democrat.
Right.
Number one. Mm-hmm. Okay. What just happened in Egypt shows exactly how complicated the situation is there. We had this near eruption of an all-out war between Israel and the Palestinians last week, and we were able to help negotiate a ceasefire with the assistance of the Egyptian president. There's no doubt about it. He was completely involved in it, and then he turns around at the same time and does this totally undemocratic thing against his own people that has them protesting there, a potential uprising there. So you've got this really complicated scenario where Egypt didn't want a war to break out between Palestinians and Israelis. We didn't want that. So we had to work with somebody who's doing things that we don't like and we don't approve of. But would you say we shouldn't have worked with them? Would it have been better if they'd had a war? Is that what you think? I don't think that.
Let me give you a completely different take. This was actually very simple from the Egyptian standpoint. And this is the difference between people that know what they're doing and are professional and people that are amateurs. Hamas is a terrorist group. And they have direct ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, which the president of Egypt has been the president of the Muslim Brotherhood. So here's how this worked. Hamas gets prodded by Egypt to start shooting rockets into Israel. What does Israel do? It does exactly what it has to do. It turns around and it defends itself. And then the president, needing to show the Jewish community that gave him a majority of their votes that he supports Israel, he says, hey, we're going to send the professionals over there. We're going to work this out. Well, Morsi already had it worked out. Within hours after Secretary Clinton arrives, the Egyptians say, here's the truce. Hamas is going to quit. So Hamas quits. And everybody looks great. Then Susan Rice, once again our intelligent ambassador to the UN, she immediately goes to the floor of the UN and tells how the Egyptians have helped and tells what a wonderful job President Morsi did. And this is her words, his tireless effort to achieve a cessation of hostilities. And everybody's happy. 24 hours later, Morsi basically assumes dictatorial control over Egypt. Morsi played us like a violin, like an expert, because you just had your UN secretary brag on what a great guy this guy is, and then 24 hours later he takes over dictatorial control. Rice can't go back and condemn it, because then we look like fools. We got played.
It's actually a lot more complicated than that.
Actually, it could be exactly that simple, couldn't it, Franklin?
Well, I love that you use the word "could" now.
Well, Franklin,
but
it's just
now
like-
hold on, John. Hold on a minute.
Once
hold on a
again,
minute.
we're going
First
to
of
play
all,
the we don't
middle-
know,
first
so
of
let's
all,
give Obama the benefit of the
No, it's
doubt.
not that at all. I'm not talking about Obama.
I'm sorry, he is ultimately in charge.
He's our president.
I agree with that.
whether
I'm
we
glad.
like it or
I'm
not.
glad you just acknowledged it. That's the first time in 3 years.
Well,
but anyway,
Obama
hold
hadn't
on.
acknowledged it yet. George Bush is to blame for everything.
But what you fail to appreciate or understand is that in the Middle East, there are lots of things going on at all times. For example, Egypt is not just supporting Hamas. They're also trying to be the dominant player over Iran. They don't support Iran. They have different groups of people in their countries.
But they both support Palestinian terrorists.
The point is, John.
The point is Palestinian terrorists will get support from either side.
The point is, this time a week ago, we were all concerned about a full-scale war erupting in the Middle East. If you weren't worried about it, then perhaps you just didn't care. But everybody else in the world was worried about it.
Once again, if you disagree with Obama, you don't care
Who
about
said
worldwide.
anything
You just
about him?
did, Franklin.
No, I didn't.
You basically said that if you disagree with what Obama's talking
I
about,
didn't say
then you
anything
must
about
you
Obama.
must want war.
You're the only one mentioned Obama in this. I'm the one who said I don't think this has anything to do with partisan politics.
But it does have. It has to do with the philosophy. It has to do with the way you run things, the way you believe in
So
things.
tell me, John, in your infinite wisdom here, exactly what should have happened last week.
Well, the problem
Tell
is,
me what should have happened. Not what the problem is. Tell me what your solution was.
Well, I'm sorry, Franklin. If you don't understand what the problem is, you certainly can't formulate a solution. The problem is this goes back 3.5 years to Obama's idea of engagement and talking to terrorists. And he has emboldened the enemy. He has weakened our position. We are now not a player in any of...
So you're saying
Franklin.
that the Arab Spring that overthrew Mubarak and brought Morsi to power was Obama's fault. That's what you're saying?
A lot of it could have been handled very... Let's put it this way. The Arab Spring...
A revolution in Egypt was Obama's fault.
Well, Franklin, we had a revolution brewing in Iran that actually could have helped us, and the president was completely silent. We watched an Iranian woman bleed to death after being shot in the head on the internet, and the president said absolutely nothing.
That's a falsehood.
Wait, has he said anything about Egypt yet? I haven't heard anything.
Yes.
They've refused to comment.
That's not true.
What? Then tell me, what has he said?
They condemned him assuming those powers. That's the official statement of the government.
Okay, have we done anything since he said that?
What are you suggesting we do?
Sanctions.
Okay, so your thought right now is
Sanctions.
okay.
Cut the money off to Egypt. They need our money.
Okay.
We're
All right.
actually
All right.
funding.
So fine.
when he put- Wait a minute,
Let's take this to its logical
let's talk about
conclusion.
the war on women.
Fine.
When Morsi
If
put
that's your
Sharia
position,
law in,
fine.
we will
If that's
pay
your
for it.
position, fine. Take away any influence we have with Egypt.
We don't
There
have
you
any
go.
influence.
Yeah.
So you say?
They ripped our flag down and burned it in the street.
Who's they, John?
The Egyptian people.
People. Now I thought you were talking about
Well,
the
actually,
government
the
now.
people that did that were in leagues with the Muslim Brotherhood, who Morsi was the chairman of.
Once again, that's the problem. It's like Pakistan. It's like Turkey. It's like places
Wait a
that
minute,
we
John.
don't necessarily
Hey, John,
agree.
I've got something for you.
As the Holy Quran tells us, the Holy Quran teaches that, the Holy Quran tells us, and the Holy Quran also says,
I think that's the problem that we have.
Franklin, I'll give you another perfect example. The president was weak in Iraq. He put the vice president in charge of securing a withdrawal where we had a presence. The vice president didn't do it. So this week, the Iraqis, we couldn't even get them to hold one terrorist that they promised when we turned over power. The Iraqi prime minister has ignored entreaties from the Obama administration and freed a top Hezbollah operative accused of murdering American soldiers. The vice president called and asked him not to. Secretary Rice called. 2 days later, he freed him. This guy's now walking around. He has the blood of U.S. soldiers on his hands, and we couldn't get the Iraqi government to hold one guy or to even extradite him to us. And they promised that it would be judgment. Now, once again, I know you hate this, but Republican senators said at the time, if you don't get him to give this guy to us now, they will release him and he will go free. And the president said, oh, no, I've got all this great working relationship. Won't happen. Well, it happened this week. The guy's loose on the street, probably planning more terrorists.
Find that statement for me, John, where the president said, "Oh, this is fine.
At the time,
I've got a
White
great
House
working
Press
relationship."
Secretary.
You just made that up.
At the time, White House Press Secretary Jay Carney said the Iraqis had assured the United States that Dequock would be tried for his crimes. That's Press Secretary Jay Carney.
Okay. So
let me
why
guess.
didn't you say that?
Let me guess. It's Jay Carney's fault,
No,
not the
why didn't you
president.
say that instead of making up an Obama quote, which is what you do all the time in here?
Jay
you make
Carney,
this stuff up
I hate to.
and then say that that's
You're
what
right,
the
Frank.
president
So
said.
let me see if I got this straight. Now the president is not responsible for what his press secretary
no,
says.
I didn't say that at all. What I said is,
If his press
the quote
secretary
that
said-
you gave,
Does
you
his
made
press
up,
secretary-
you attributed
Well,
it to
one,
somebody who
Frank,
didn't say
Does
it.
his
didn't
press
say it was a
secretary
direct
speak for him?
quote.
Does his press secretary speak for him?
Of course he does.
Then
All
why
right.
is his words not binding on
I
the
didn't
president?
say they weren't. You said it was the president's words, and you said that's what the president
John,
said.
just say press secretary.
Neither one of those was true.
Oh, well, once again, what's the definition of is?
You know, there's a fever that's been going around the country about success. Is it succession?
There's not a fever.
Well,
There's some net jobs.
well, there's right now. Let's see. There's 1 million people from 50 states that have signed online petitions to take their opposition to the extreme, succeeding from the United States.
Okay.
They're doing it on the White House We the People website, taking advantage of a pledge to review any petition that gains at least 25,000 signatures.
All right. So, what's your point?
Well, first off, the rules of that website, which the White House set up, is at 25,000 signatures, the White House will issue a statement. No statement.
What's your point?
I mean, there seems to be a problem with people wanting to do that. Why would anybody? This never came up until recently.
The only thing that's going on right now is in our modern age where we have Facebook and Twitter and all this instant communication.
That's all happened in 4 years, though, isn't it?
All the fringe people in this country now can find each other.
Well, I'm sure once the UN takes over control of the internet, they'll put a stop to that.
All right. Now
As
then,
soon as, while you're at
Franklin,
it,
they're
John,
meeting right now to
for God's
discuss
sakes.
controlling the internet.
For God's sake,
They're
John.
meeting, the UN,
John.
I'm sorry to interrupt with a fact, but the UN right now is meeting to discuss how to control the internet.
That is a lie.
Well, what are they discussing, Franklin?
They're discussing rules and protocols.
Which is controlling.
Oh, wait, John.
a minute, rules
John.
and protocol
John.
are not
Wait,
controlling.
John.
what
The
about free
wait a minute.
enterprise?
The servers that control the internet, where are they? Are they in the UN headquarters?
Well, most of the ones
Where
that
are
hack
they?
us are in China.
No, they're not. They're in the United States of America, John.
And so
If
we're
you
going to
guys
let
would
the United
stop
Nations,
chasing
so you're going to let the
stupid
United...
conspiracy theories and try to engage in some adult conversation
Franklin,
about policy,
Franklin,
we would make
let
progress
me put
in
it to you this way.
country.
When I say the United Nations is meeting to talk about controlling the internet, and you come back with the reply that, oh, no, they're not. They're only looking for rules and procedures. I'm sorry. I call that control.
All right, we're going to open up the phone line, 614-555-3. Give us a call if you want to. I think y'all scared off the callers.
Republicans are scared of the world for some strange reason. We can't figure out why. They're terrified.
Well, we
of
were
the
scared
world.
of the world when Bush was president.
Yeah.
Oh, sure you were.
Go ahead, caller.
Won't you stop your bickering and get the music on? It's sickening. We
It's-
get enough of it from Bahamas, his life, and everybody else's, so just stop it.
Anything else? I don't think she's got anything politically to say.
We could talk about music, but I don't know a lot about it.
Let's take another call. Good morning. You're live.
Good morning, Doball.
Good morning.
I think you and John need to get over it. Obama is our president, so we got to live with it.
Amen.
Where is he?
Well, Red, when your taxes go up, you need to think a little bit about him.
Hey, where is he?
You think that other would have done any better?
Yeah, I do. Matter of fact, the Democrats are now putting forward Romney's very idea as a good compromise.
Hey, where is our president?
maybe you're not supposed to know. You don't supposed to keep up with him every minute of his life.
I'd like to see him every now and then, let him say something positive.
Well, that's his business.
It's
You're
called being
paying his
president.
salary, Red.
Yeah.
It's your business.
Huh? Do you think he ought to be working on his budget that he hadn't put together in 3
How do
years?
you know he's not working on it?
Yeah, how do we know he's not?
Well, I mean, how do you work on anything?
Well, see, that's the way this
shaking
works,
hands
Steve,
and
with
touring the
Benghazi
streets?
and everything. We're just supposed to assume that he's doing everything
My
right.
question is,
What about the physical clip?
What about
that's
the
coming?
most transparent presidency in
how
history?
do you know that they aren't having
Franklin,
conversations daily?
what about
this?
the most transparent
How do you know
presidency in history? He was going to be the most transparent. He was going to put everything on the internet.
Hey, Red.
Y'all are just mad because he got in there as president, so let him live.
No, we're not
mad,
mad.
Red. I'm scared to death.
No, we're sad. We're not mad. We're sad.
No, you just put him down every way he goes.
No, we tell the truth.
No, you don't.
Where is he? Do you think he ought to talk about this Egypt situation going on? Have you heard him say one thing about it?
He ought to do what he wants to. Because
You think he ought to? You think he ought to have a budget? He never had one of those either.
He don't owe me nothing. He does it the way he wants to.
Well, that's exactly right, and that's our problem with him.
Well, you just have to keep your problem in, won't you?
Well, does he do it the way you want it done?
I don't care what he does.
He did it the way a majority of the American people wanted it done.
All right. Thanks, Red.
He sold it the way a majority of the people wanted it sold. The right track, wrong track numbers still say 54% say we're on the wrong track.
Yeah,
Franklin.
but they also say that 65% that they hold the Republicans
I
responsible
don't disagree
for
at
that.
all. The public, perception and reality can be two very different things.
I'm going to change everything real quick. Do you think that an employee should be allowed with a permit to have a gun in their car?
Absolutely. In the car, and I don't think it ought to come out of the car. I don't think it ought to probably come out of the the glove box.
So and I'm not taking a position on this, but I'm asking for clarification. So you think that an employer has no right to control what an employee brings onto his premises?
I don't think that, and I understand that is the real problem here. And to be honest, these are both conservative issues, and so you've got two conservative issues that are basically at odds with each other. My concern for this is the idea of the concealed carry permits. There are a lot of women in bad relationships where a boyfriend or an ex-husband has threatened their life and they've gotten restraining orders and they've gone out and they've gotten a concealed carry permit to protect themselves. I am very concerned that someone could say, I know my wife will be at work. I know she can't have her gun that normally keeps me at bay with her in the parking lot. I'm going to wait for her as soon as she drives out of the lot and I'm going to attack her. That's my concern. And I have a real problem with what I said earlier because I do think private property rights should be very, very strong. I don't, and that's probably why I said I think it has to stay in the glove box, locked up, can't come out of the car, because I'm trying to balance those two legal positions.
Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Well, if you got gun permit, then you shouldn't.
Turn your radio down just a little bit. You're echoing.
How's that?
Better. Go ahead.
Well, if the employer shouldn't, as long as the employee carries, don't bring it and flash around like his John Hancock, then there shouldn't be nothing said.
Well, and actually, that's probably one of the. It's one of the things that actually makes the point, but it's a hard thing to prove. People that right now are going to come in with a gun and shoot up the employment, which is what employers are concerned with. They want to make sure they can provide a safe environment. Those people are violating the law anyway. So you have that same argument. How do you know there's not 100 guns in the parking lot as we speak, with or without this law?
It might be a good idea if somebody came walking in the front door and started shooting up that somebody had a gun to go to.
Well, that case actually, not only has that case been made, that's actually proved out.
Let me just throw this out there.
Wait a minute. Let me finish.
From
Caller, anything else?
Yeah, I think everybody should leave their guns at home and not take them out in public because it's not very nice going around shooting people anyway. So they need to leave their guns at home.
No.
Start packing the Bible.
All right, thanks.
If your position is that the constitutional right that's involved would allow you to carry the gun into your car, your glove compartment. Is there any valid argument for why you wouldn't be able to carry it on into the job then? If it's a constitutional issue?
Because it butts up against the owner of the business's constitutional rights. I understand.
I mean, it seems to me that if that's your position, it's the use of the weapon that's the issue, not the possession of it.
Well,
right?
Franklin, you as a lawyer should be able to maybe help us a little bit. From the standpoint of your car, is that not your personal property inside the car?
Well, I can tell you this.
Sometimes it is. The police have a disagreement.
I think some of the employers that have a problem with it are saying that once the car enters the gate, it's private property, and they don't want them on private property.
Yeah, I mean, could you tell someone, for example, that they can't bring a gun in their car onto your property, your house? Could you tell them that?
Then let me ask you a legal question. I'm not arguing. I'm trying to understand this. Let's say I'm a business owner and I am a good, strong Christian man, and one of my employees has pornography in his car. Can I tell him he's not allowed to bring pornography in his car onto my property?
Traditionally, yes.
Well, then I guess that would lend itself to being more on the side of the owner of the property.
I'm just saying, and this is where, particularly in Second Amendment issues, where I get bogged down sometimes. I just can't. I don't accept the idea that there are no limitations at all. Now, some people
you accept
take
that on sexual morality.
Some people take that position that there are no limitations on it. I'm just not sure that that's feasible.
Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Yes, it's strange to me that we talk about this. The people that are going to shoot up, they're going to get the guns anyway. Has there been any studies? I've seen some, but I didn't believe them. Have there been any valid studies on when somebody does start shooting up, if people are allowed to have guns, how many are killed, versus if people are not allowed to have guns, how many are killed?
Well, actually, there are. Every state that passed concealed carry laws saw significant reductions in violent crime rates after passage of those laws. And there's all kinds of anecdotal evidence. There was a guy that walked in a store, picked up a knife off the counter of the store, walked out in the street, and proceeded to stab people. He killed a couple of people. And a bystander walking by that had a concealed carry permit shot him and stopped that attack and saved people's lives. It happens all the time. And matter of fact, I'm sitting here looking at a report. Over the last 10 years, there's been a 54% rise in the number of background checks for guns. Gun ownership has gone up tremendously. In Virginia, for example, it rose 63%, but gun-related offenses dropped more than 27% during the same time.
I'm not really arguing the point that John's making. I would question the linkage there between those things. I mean, for example, there's a statistic in the Chattanooga Times this morning that talks about the violent crime rate in Chattanooga. It's been you've been reading about all these murders down there, right. But the facts are the violent crime rate is 70% lower than it was 22 years ago in Chattanooga.
I can't
But
believe
the gun
that.
ownership is significally higher, Franklin.
Well, the only point I was making is that does not line up with concealed carry laws.
I don't disagree.
Because that
but
wasn't 20 years ago. That's relatively
I don't
new.
disagree, Franklin, but the reason I'm making this is the gun control people actually do make the linkage. They make the argument that more guns mean more crime, and actually the evidence would indicate the exact opposite of that. On top of that, the last statistics I saw said around 94 to 95% of all guns used in the commission of crimes are obtained illegally. Less than 5% of guns used in crimes are actually legally owned guns in the first place. Well, the problem is the boys at Columbine, they broke 21 different gun laws. You think a 22nd law was going to make a difference? Now, that still doesn't get back to our original argument, is where do you decide between personal ownership?
I think the question is there a line at all? That's the issue.
A couple of things I'll say is one day I know we had a couple going through a divorce.
Sure.
And the husband come through the front door of the office. And it was a pretty scary situation. Did not see any weapons on him at the time, but very easily he could have been concealing one. Loud, violent, had to call the police. Police had to come, take him out. Now then, if that same person had came in carrying a gun, demanded and started shooting, what would have been the next thing? I mean, of course, we're going to call 911.
Sure.
Guns flying, people out the door. If there was a car outside with a gun in it, it might help the situation.
That's actually that happens a lot, and that's all anecdotal, but that happens a lot. One of the saddest ones was one of the worst cases about 15 years ago in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Guy went in a law firm and began shooting people.
Yeah.
He walked around for, I think, 28 minutes shooting people, and there were all kinds of accounts of women and men that locked the door, climbed under their desk, and prayed that he wouldn't open the door to their office. Now, he opened doors and shot people who were hiding in their office. The point was made, if one person in that law firm had had a concealed carry permit, had a gun in that building, they would have shot him. And I can tell you, this is a horrible thing to say.
I mean, but you don't know that.
Well, I mean,
frankly, I can say that I would hate to be in that situation, but I don't think, and I'm comfortable with guns, and maybe that's different, but I don't think I could sit there and watch someone execution style shoot people
without trying to help
and not stop
I
it.
don't disagree with that.
Without trying to
But there
stop
is
it.
another side to it, okay? And you know, the average person, even though they've got a gun permit, okay, and they're responsible citizens, I'm not questioning any of that, has never been in that kind of situation before. It's a stressful place. You know, it's not. We're not talking about trained combat professionals here. You might react that way, and somebody else might react that way.
Frankly,
they might also be shaken like a leaf
right.
and accidentally shoot somebody else too. I'm not saying
You're
one
right,
way or the other.
Franklin,
It's
but
just a
without the
complicated
gun, you don't
question.
have the option.
It's a complicated question, and I'm not comfortable personally with the idea that there are no limits at all on what we do with weapons. Now,
Well,
am
Franklin,
I a strong gun control proponent? No.
But Franklin, how many laws are already there, and do they affect someone who's made a decision to criminally break the law?
Well, I think, for example, there were fewer assault weapons available previously than there are now.
Actually, long rifles account for less than 0.25% of all homicides.
I understand.
All rifles, not assault rifles, all rifles.
I understand that.
Did you hear about the shooting in Little Falls, Minnesota, where a Minnesota homeowner who shot 2 unarmed teenagers in the midst of an apparent Thanksgiving Day break-in told authorities he feared they had a weapon, but acknowledged firing more shots than he needed to, and appeared to take pride in a good, cleaning, finishing shot. But anyway, this was a couple teenagers broke into the guy's house. Make a long story short, the guy started firing. One gun jammed. He went and got another gun. And
well, the law has always been that a person is entitled to take reasonable measures to protect their person in their home. Number one,
those things go back to Blackstone 500 years ago.
Yeah. Now, you sometimes do have cases where you raise the question of whether something's reasonable or not. I mean, if a 10-year-old kid is trying to break into your house and you shoot him 14 times, you know, you may have an issue there. We've had cases where people were shot some teenagers who were who were rolling a tree with toilet paper. The question then becomes, was it a reasonable fear somebody had or not?
All right, let me tell you what happened here. The guy's name was Brian David Smith. He was 64 years old, and he was charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder. Minnesota law allows a homeowner to use deadly force on an intruder if a reasonable person would fear they're in danger of harm. Yeah. And Smith told investigators he was afraid the intruders might have a weapon. However, Smith's actions weren't justified, Morrison County Sheriff Michael Witzel said. The law doesn't permit you to execute somebody once the threat is gone.
Well, that'd be the question. I mean, if you shot somebody and they're down on the ground,
that should be the end of it.
That should be the end of it. Do you go and execute them at that point? Well, that's the issue.
I will say you can carry that both ways too far. There have been cases where there was a case where a girl ran down the street. She's knocking on doors, let me in, let me in. No one lets her in. One woman, a single woman, let her in, closes the door. Her boyfriend kicks the door in, knocks the homeowner to the ground, and is stomping her. She retrieves a pistol, shoots him. The DA charged her because he didn't have a weapon. Well, a man twice your size knocking you to the ground, stomping on you, I think that was reasonable.
I'm sure you can always find some.
Well, my point is, it's all it's a matter of what we
question.
consider, and the problem too, Franklin, is like a woman. A woman may have a very different view of someone kicking their door in than a man.
It's what a reasonable person in that person's shoes would have thought under the circumstance.
Well, just like you mentioned, though, Franklin, people don't ever know how they're reacting. You put a jury of people together. If they've never had someone kick a door in, they may not have the same understanding of what that feels like. Our house, when we bought it, Miss Mayfield had a home invasion. There were bolt locks on every interior door in the house.
He read this example, though, and we don't know all the facts, but it sounds like this guy fired his weapon, shot somebody, and then went and got another gun so he could reload.
That probably was
that's probably where he went way over the line.
Well, let me tell you. Let me give you a little more fact about this.
Yeah.
One of the persons that he shot was laying at the bottom of the staircase in his basement area.
Okay.
And was laughing at him.
Okay. He was laying there?
She was laying there.
Okay.
She'd been shot. And she was laughing at the guy that shot her.
Well,
he
that
shot.
Would probably come into play in his defense.
And that's when he went ahead and finished it off.
Well, I mean, do you have a reasonable fear that somebody who's shot laying on the ground laughing at you is going to hurt you?
But I will say this, though, Franklin. That brings up another cultural point. At what point do we have a little damn common sense? You've broken into someone's house. He shot you. He's standing over you, and you don't have enough damn sense to say I'm sorry and keep your mouth shut? Now, I don't say that. I'm not saying that means she was entitled to be shot at.
Here was the guy's comment.
I'm not defending the home burglar, but I'm saying we can't come up with laws that have what we call the common sense exception to them. There's no way to do that.
Here's what he said: if you shoot somebody and they laugh at you, you shoot again.
Well,
even if it requires you to go get another gun and reload.
I think that
that might be just a little too much.
I think he's in trouble, and he probably should be. But by the same token, I think she ought to be in the Darwin Awards for, if you're dumb enough to laugh at a guy who just shot you standing over you.
Nobody's suggesting she shouldn't go to jail for breaking into somebody's house.
Well, Steve, there's another case that's actually much more tragic. The little girl who this boy was on trial for knocking her to the ground, stomping her head. I think he did brain damage. Horrible crime. He obviously has some problems, but she knew he had problems, and had just met him online that day, proceeds to talk about the fact that his brother had killed himself in front of the boy and what a loser his brother was. She taunted him. So what happened to her was horrible. He should be held accountable. But by the same token, you're like, golly, what is going on in our society that we're so ugly to each other and we don't have enough common sense to shut our mouth and protect ourselves?
John, I got to say, if there was one area where I thought we were least likely to have a calm, analytical conversation, it would have been gun control, and we just did it.
All right. We about to wind up this day. I want to say I will not.
Actually, let me change that.
Here we go.
No. I just want to say I viewed that conversation as gun rights, not gun control. Okay,
gun rights versus gun control. All right. Anyway, we've had a very interesting day today, and I will not be here next week. I've got to go out of town, so we will have a fill-in commentator. I think Mr. Toby Pendergrass I work with is going to come over and fill in with you guys, and maybe we can try to come up with a few things besides Obama to talk about. What do you think?
We can talk about local issues if you want.
Well, that'd be great.
I don't know what local issues we can talk about right now. But.
Well, it'd be interesting to see because it relates to us locally. I saw that Hamilton County is opening a new elementary school in Ooltewah. It's in the paper. It's going to serve 1,100 kids, and the price tag was $21 million. I'd be curious to see how that compares to the price of the schools that we've built here in terms of the number of kids. It'd be an interesting comparison. I don't know the answer.
I think one of the things, though, from that standpoint, of both the local school boards, I think, have become much more sensible, much more reasonable in dealing with both the elected bodies that control the purse strings and trying to be cost effective than we've seen in the past.
There you have it.
All right, listen, we'll be back next Wednesday. I won't be here, but John and Franklin will be here with their new co-host that'll be filling in next week. And we hope to see you back here at Whoop Radio next Wednesday. Bye-bye now.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey. Catch them again on Whoop FM at noon today and every Wednesday morning from 7:30 to 8:30. Now, back to more music on Whoop FM.